I've only been there once.
Yeah.
I traded. I've been there.
Nice.
Oh, right. We're live.
Spinning. Welcome.
No, we're live up there.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Well,
I'll set up ready to go down there. First time logging in.
that's what Kale said. The IPers.
Bits.
That was what I was looking for.
It's all ball bearings these days.
See, the Rams are picked to pick in Super Bowl again. I said, oh, a different kind of Ram? Oh, sorry.
Back to Los Angeles. Yeah. No. No. Don't say it.
After
Oh yeah, my Disney experience.
It's the last one. Well, it does. Just all the. That's not agreement. That's just email. Or I think this is. No, those are just her comments. Oh, then we. Oh, that. While we're waiting for time, just so that the committee's where the timeline, first negotiations still happen. As of late last week, normally the development agreement would have been posted along with the agenda on Friday. However, because there were ongoing negotiations, I'll take responsibility. I was going to make the agreement that was not going to be the same one. Thinking that if multiple versions floating around, it'd get confusing. Some neighbors talk to them about it. Allison's not finally not posted on around 1 o'clock, noon or 1 o'clock. Finally. So I just want to know that that was a call that I made, and so do I handle it, or if I should handle it any other way, then I'd be happy to discuss it with you. That's why there was a.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, no, Michael.
Kale, did you post that in a link in the on the agenda?
No, it was in Legistar.
I think you had to click on the agenda
On the more details.
for more details.
Okay, because
But I did that and it wasn't. It was a 2-page doc.
There's a 2-page document that I did have posted on Friday as a holder, just to make sure people knew it was forthcoming. But I sent it to the clerk around noon, and when I checked it around 2 o'clock, I checked then.
Maybe the hype wasn't.
May not have been at the time. All right, so again, 9:30, so I don't want to waste too much time here. This thing here. So just to get into it, to explain what's going on here, this is, again, my review based on about 11 hours worth of lead time. So I want to make sure everyone's aware that I did my best to summarize what I think are the high points and get everything together. So, starting off with the basics, city's a party to this development agreement. There are two LLCs, both operated by Cobalt Partners LLC, which is the primary developer. In this case, there's also a lender type LLC that is used for financing only, but is not going to own property. Properties involved, just to go over, I think people know, but I want to make sure. It's a brief summary. The school district buildings are involved. There's 3 parcels. And this will be converted into commercial space under the development agreement as presented. There is some new market tax credit availability used in this project, and they are currently tax exempt and switch to taxable upon acquisition and occupancy. There are also, in this one, 5 parcels, although McKinley Park is 3 parcels, it operates as one. There are 2 parking lots also involved in this. And so this is, again, just north of Washington Street, west of 70th Street. Draft development agreement circulating right now. Also, finally, there's a single parcel. It's a large parcel with multiple addresses on the east side of 70th, south of Washington. It's an Allis Chalmers building and a large parking lot associated with that. And so these are the parcels that are really involved in this development agreement. Primarily, the ones that you'll pay attention to are this parcel, as well as the parking lots and McKinley Park. The school administration building and other school buildings are involved, but are not necessarily linked up to a lot of requirements like the remaining properties are. So the phase 1 project really takes place primarily on this parcel, so everyone's aware. I'll get more into the phase 1. So again, the reason that the city is involved in this, we don't own any of this land right now. There is an interest in McKinley Park, which makes it somewhat of a city issue, and also the city is providing money to finance this project. Just so you're aware, there's a total of 18.21 acres in this project. So that final step is really my message today. Is the goal today is to give you just a lawyer's boring contract review so that you can weigh the risks and rewards and decide what you want to do with this thing. I'm going to say things that are just things I think you want to be aware of, but it does not mean that I'm endorsing them or I'm advising you to do anything. Again, because it's complex and because of the timeline that I had for review, I'm trying to keep it a little brief here. There are rights created by this agreement. That's what I'm really focusing on, is rights and duties created. It's something that's already assumed by law, or requires someone to negotiate in good faith, or requires mutual consent of the parties in the future. I'm not going to get into that because that decision can always be made later. This is more focused on if you authorize this agreement to be signed, you're committing yourself to the following. That's what I'm trying to focus on today. On the left side, you're going to see a developer's ideal timeline for this project. This is exhibit, I believe it's exhibit I. Is it?
D. It's D.
D. So exhibit D in your packet will go over the ideal developer timeline. Now this is something the developer put together with an idea of just trying to say what their plan is. Now on the right side, you're going to see what the agreement actually holds the developer to. And so you'll see it doesn't line up with the ideal project, and that's just to make sure there's some cushion time in there to make sure that any type of delays don't cause automatic defaults.
Mr. Chair. Is it possible to get a copy of this too right away?
Yes, I can. This will be posted on the Legistar as well. But
That is an excellent summary right there. Is there any way to have that handed out now? Oh, here, you know what? I'll take a screenshot. Thank you.
So on the right-hand side is what you're going to see is the actual agreement's contingencies. So what's essentially happening is the Allis Chalmers building is going to be demolished, and then a hotel will be built at the southeast corner of that intersection. So of that parcel, the far northwest corner. And in the process, that will be likely redivided so that it's a separate parcel. The plan is to move quickly, efficiently, and ripping the building down from north to south so that the hotel can potentially begin construction while the southern part of the building is still being demolished. That's the reason for it. It would improve some efficiencies. But there is a 6-month cushion because although it's set to finish by March of 20, the contract requires it to be finished by September 2020. If it's not done by that time, there's an option for the city to do the job, complete it, whatever's left, and place that cost on the tax roll. The hotel is set to start construction in October 19. However, it does not have to begin construction until, again, September 30th, 2020. And also, there's another contingency built in where if construction doesn't start due to market conditions, there is the ability to set that out approximately in 30 months. And so if it's a 30-month delay, they'd put it back March of 2023. So, but even during that time, if a hotel does become viable again, a hotel could still be built during that time. So just to let you know, this is the timeline for the construction of the new building on the new parcel, which is in, again, the northwest side of that very large 9-acre parcel that is the Allis Chalmers now.
When is the appropriate time to interject questions? You want to get the presentation first?
You can ask questions along the way, I'd say, and
I think it's better to ask them along the way.
Okay, if it's all right. What constitutes a change in market?
there's terms, there are provisions in the contract that say third-party market analysis would be done by a company agreed to by the city and the developer. And then based upon that market analysis, it would determine whether the market's changed to the point where a hotel is no longer the proper set.
Yeah.
There'd be a third party involved in making that decision. That'd be agreed upon by both parties.
I'd imagine with the DNC 2020 that
They're not gonna make.
There's a very natural incentive to hustle, but I don't know if the project's viable by that time, even if it starts tomorrow, because it's a lot of work. Again, this is all part of phase one. So this phase one project is scheduled to be finished by November of 2020. And again, that's the ideal timeline. However, because of other contingencies that might take place, ultimately the latest that the project can start would be in March 2023 if enough contingencies are hit. So that's just more to give you a window of time as to what the developer intends to do, but what the contract actually holds the developer.
one more question. We're putting the costs for these things on the tax roll if they're not performed. What I'm understanding from reading this, is that correct? So for example, like demolition.
Demolition is clearly stated that it can be put on the tax roll. There are other methods of collecting, including some things can be put on the tax roll, some things are more personal guarantees or guarantees that kick in if TIF financing is available. But for the most part, I wouldn't assume that things can be collected by putting them on the tax roll at this point in time unless specifically identified.
Well, I guess my question with that is, you know, God forbid that something would happen to the entities, the LLCs and Cobalt. Who pays that amount if it was foreclosed upon or something like that? Who collects that?
Are you talking about the cost to demolish?
Yeah, I mean, does the county then pick up the tab if the property owner can't pay its tab?
Yes. So if there are special assessments or special charges in the tax roll and they go unpaid, the county has the option to foreclose on that property, wiping out all these specials and then taking title and then reselling that property.
But they don't.
No, they
because
don't.
That law has.
Correct. So
They would not pay us the demo costs.
the understanding is that that type of special charge would not be recuperated, just that amount. So that would wipe that out. And whatever money would be spent on demolishing the buildings would not be recoupable from the county after tax foreclosure.
So that would be on us.
Correct. That'd be a bill that'd be paid up front and likely not recovered if it came to the tax foreclosure process. But if they pay the tax bill, then it'd be recovered. Questions on this slide? So specifically to the duties of the developer, this is just, I tried to summarize, although it's spread out throughout the agreement, I tried to summarize on one page or two what they really are committing to. Developers committing to obtaining about $7.25 million in private financing from bank loans, and also agreeing that there cannot be any change to the financial circumstances of the company or of the people behind the company. Grants for utilities, abiding by a $16 million budget, which is the budget that's included also as an exhibit on your agreement, showing how the money's coming in and how it's being spent to acquire and remodel the school administration building and related parcels. This actually is not updated as recently as 6/30 because there's a little bit of a change. So the vacation of a bordering right-of-way, that is actually not quite automatic. It's either going to be removed or changed, so that would be at the discretion of the developer. So I'll present these to you at the end of what the proposed changes are going to be. Also, the next bold item, this unconditional evergreen letter of credit cash amount. In your agreement, it says TBD, to be determined, because that wasn't established when the agreement was posted this afternoon. You're going to see later on, I'm going to propose some amendments to that section. And it's the council that, this is the one that really needs to be filled in. The rest of them are all going to be optional, but I'll present those options in detail later on and what that means. The developer also has to deliver a hotel loan commitment by December 1 of this year. That's just simply saying that they have the financing arranged to the point where a bank is committed to the loan to build that hotel. That's an important piece for a few triggers later on, which I can get into. And then the last one on this page, at least, is the guarantee payment for debt service costs, which is covered by TIF guarantee collateral. I couldn't get more technical than that. I don't know how. So what it's essentially saying is when you borrow money, which the city's borrowing money, there's going to be costs to that borrowing, paying back the people who've loaned the money. And because that money is going to be hanging out, that there's going to be an annual cost, and that cost is going to be put back onto the developer, be paid through TIF financing. So if there's at any point in time that amount not paid for, then the city can tap actually a letter of credit or a cash deposit, depending on what council approves and what the developer agrees to take care of that debt service cost. That's while this that's for the TIF guarantee, I guess you can say. So I don't know what the exact number is going to be. Peggy might be able to give you a more accurate number on it, but it's going to be important because it's approximately 300,000. I'm guessing is what our deficiencies scheduled to be each year, around there.
The beginning, the first 3 years, it's about a 300, depending on how. That's what happened.
So the way it works is when taxes are paid into that tax increment financing district, they're used to take care of the costs. But in the beginning, because there won't be a lot of assessed value quite yet, there might not be enough money coming in through the tax increment financing payments to cover all the costs. It means the developer is covering the balance between whatever it costs to have that debt service and whatever is collected. If that's that gap.
Gail?
Sure.
No change in companies or principals' financial circumstances. What would be a change? Divorce, cancer? I mean, we're talking about some companies, but we're also talking about some individual people here, right?
Yes. So the company is involved, and at least one individual who's the primary person behind Cobalt Partners, Scott Yock. Those are the individuals who would have to have no change in their financial circumstances. So I think it might be even worded as a significant change. I would assume things like bankruptcy, insolvency, closing or dissolving of the LLCs, things like that. So major events. I wouldn't say, just as a general matter, that a little more debt or a little less debt at any one point in time is going to be a significant enough change to warrant that provision kicking in the way it's worded. It's not worded very specifically.
And so what happens if something does substantially change in his financial?
There are some remedies that actually do involve bankruptcy and insolvency. So if that is the case, I gotta refer on that one. I know it's in here. Do you have any recall that part of it?
I think it should. Might be at the default preview.
I think it is, yeah. Yeah. I know it might actually. I know it's later in the presentation. I may have to wait till then just to remind myself of it. The city's duties here are actually quite limited. Really, our position as a city here is that we're the lender, one of the primary lenders. There are also a bank and personal equity coming into this picture, but $7.2 million is the total through a forgivable loan, of which $700,000 came from an entity that does a lot of work in the city, and also just general duties to work with the developer in the future to seek out funding sources. But other than that, it's really the developer's job to do all the work and the city's job to ensure that the provisions of this contract are complied with by the developer. Put a specific slide up for McKinley Park because it was of interest to a number of people. This is really the timeline and the contingencies around the park, at least as of earlier tonight. There are some other potential options with this park that again will be at the end. but the idea would be that agreement would call for McKinley Park. The city currently has the right to repurchase it from the school district. The city would exercise that right and then assign it directly to the developer. So the school district would actually sell the property directly to the developer. The city would not fall back into the chain of title. There's not much of a difference other than additional paperwork if that wouldn't happen, but this is the quickest, easiest way to do it. Once that occurs, the city would then lease back McKinley Park from the developer for $1 a year. And this is where it gets to be a little different in that there were a lot of changing circumstances on how that park was going to be used. So one of the restrictions was the developer cannot change park's use until the city takes title to a replacement parcel. The latest agreement that was presented, that is in your packet, showed a small piece of land sort of in the middle of McKinley Park that was designated as the park area, with the northern part and the southern part not being part of that.
Last page, Exhibit J.
So if you look at Exhibit J, you'll see hash marks or crosshairs, not crosshairs, hash marks on the middle area of McKinley Park. That was right there. So it's on the northern side, kind of where it's just south and to the east of an MATC parcel. So you'll see right there, the development agreement as it was presented this afternoon had that smaller parcel. Since then, the developers indicated that there would not be a problem in extending that south to Washington Street.
We had not agreed to what.
This was just what was last presented, and so, sure.
You back up and describe that again. Are you saying that this area and this entire area?
No, if you look in the darkened area, there's lines crossing from
Cross-hatching?
left to right. Yes.
Yep.
That area was designated as the quote park area. What that means is the area north that doesn't have those lines, and the area that was south that didn't have those lines was available for development just upon a 6-month notice to the city, without finding a replacement park. That has changed because since that was put out this afternoon, the developers agreed to extend that all the way to Washington Street, so that only the north side of McKinley Park would be subject to development upon 6 months' notice, but the southern part of the park would actually only be able to be developed if a replacement parcel is acquired and title is given to the city. Either acquired, however it becomes acquired, but eventually the city would have to be the title holder to that parcel before the southern half of the agreement, or southern half of the park could be developed. And I've got a better map later on showing that.
And at the sole discretion of the cities. So if the city decide not to move the park, it wouldn't get moved. So it's not a joint decision, just sole discretion.
So I don't think I quite understood that. You're saying that this piece and this piece are in the agreement, but this piece can be developed later once another piece is brought.
No, they're basically taking the crosshatch lines, extending that whole thing down to Washington Street.
So here to here.
Yep, picture the whole thing all now as one piece.
Yep.
That now becomes the quote park area, which
Okay.
will be protected, which will remain a park, that whole area.
Mhm.
It's about 1.6 acres.
Okay.
Rather than the 0.6 acres that was originally designed, it's now about 1.6 acres. That would remain a park until a replacement park parcel was titled with the city. And then most recently, the developer agreed that it would be at the city's discretion as to whether to release that parcel, that little area of McKinley Park, for development if a suitable replacement was found. So
At the city's sole discretion, so the city does not approve any other relocation, and that park stays as free.
which is why this is kind of difficult to present on, because you'll see in the agreement that it simply described a 1 to 1.5 acre parcel as being a suitable replacement as long as it was within the arterial streets, 70th to 76th, Greenfield to the northern boundary. We were trying to create a situation where described the parcel that would be a suitable replacement without actually having to identify it. Instead, though, the developers recently said that there's not going to be a description of a suitable parcel or any restrictions on it. It simply would be that the southern half of McKinley Park would remain a park until the city approved a replacement wherever that may be. So it grants a lot more discretion to the city before the southern half is developed.
Kale?
Sure.
So if the city decided the replacement park didn't have to be in Fairview Park neighborhood, the replacement park could be in west of State Fair Park?
If approved by the council,
If approved by the council.
yes.
And And if I understand this correctly, currently McKinley's 5 acres,
5.2, yep,
and then it's gonna be cut down to 1.6.
yes.
And the building stays with the bathrooms, the parking lot.
Yes. it's
I
along
don't
that
see,
line.
no one's playing kickball, t-ball, or baseball ever.
The school district previously has decided that they're gonna relocate those 2 ball fields to another location as part of their
Well,
decision.
you know, it's one thing for the school district to say they're gonna relocate a ball field for program stuff they do. But as far as pickup games from the neighborhood,
That's correct.
it's gone.
Southern parcel would not be large enough for.
No, the southern parcel would not be large enough for any kind of field sports at all.
Correct.
Kale, what's the acreage? I mean, I understand it's over 5.5 acres, entire, soil and.
McKinley,
Valley Park.
McKinley's 3 parcels, total 5.1 acres.
2.2 acres of the north was what
The
we
north,
added for the
okay.
pillar site. Then the other north.
How many, in West Dallas within the neighborhood area, how many parks?
A park, Roosevelt Park, for example, that we just got from the school district, after they built the
Yes.
clinic, was 1 acre. And that's what we built the park on. I think I showed a slide of that. Park.
So,
If I'm not mistaken, Copper Road East, I believe, is about 1.3, 1.4.
so
acres.
Liberty Heights may be 2 acres, 2.5 acres, 5 parks,
No, Liberty Heights is way bigger than that.
That's be 10 or 12.
Yeah.
12 acres?
That's a huge.
That's what,
So what's reservoir?
we should get the,
Reservoir's gotta be about 6.
Liberty Heights, I don't think it's 12 acres.
That's big. That's a big park.
I know it's a big park.
You said that, I think it's like 7.2 or so.
Well, it's,
McKinley Park is actually not as much acreage as you think because it's so narrow. You square out a parcel, it obviously gains a lot of acreage. So it's a lot of, for being 2 blocks wide, it is only 5 acres is surprising because it's very large north and south.
Mr. Chair? I think I asked this when we were in the other room. Why does this land need to be part of the agreement? I heard rumors it was as collateral or something from the bank.
2 parts of, we can get into that later with the development, probably explain it better. Part of it's collateral, part of it's positioning for other parking lots to be facilitating their development.
My understanding is, and in conjunction with the development in the general area, but it also served as collateral for financing that was obtained for, I think it was Allis Chalmers building, do all the work over there.
I got one more. What would the acreage be if this MATC parcel, this north parcel, all became one park?
Maybe
About
4.
I think it's 3.2 when I measured it,
All this with the street vacated?
including the right of way.
If we go into this agreement and we say this is the parkland, does it preclude us from any point in time swapping and making this a contiguous park on the north end, or is that gonna be developed in the immediate future?
Under the latest agreement, the southern part would remain a park until the city selected a replacement. And so depending what happens on the north side, if there is a development that occurs on the north side of McKinley Park, that would likely restrict its availability as a park later on.
Or to answer, or yes, if that was not developed, they could be moved, and those could
Could
join
be
together
merged as a
and then
larger
move it up
park.
there to even
So that's in
bigger,
flux,
even to a bigger land mass, but that's gonna be at your discretion.
right, guaranteed on the bottom, but possible that we could work something out on the north.
But we'd have to buy that property from MATC. They're not just
Oh,
give it away.
I'm not arguing that.
And we have explored that only because this developer is looking, working with MATC to do some other land swaps. So it's a viable option, but because we don't have any written agreement to do anything, we can't really present it as a real potential. But it's something that we're exploring, and it's very possible.
And that
Wouldn't
does,
that be a discontinuous park as well? If it was MATC in the southern piece? And then MATC as a government entity is gonna go for the highest bidder.
There are some other negotiation points in here that MATC wants that the development has. like the parking structure that's the two-story parking structure right next to MATC.
So there's a
They
carrot.
want to have that. They put a 3-story addition on that, to their building. So we've been talking with MATC for a long time, Mr. Chairman.
Is it okay?
Absolutely.
Just do it later, otherwise I prefer, but just, you know, to be clear, Scott Yelk with Well Partners, and, you know, we went through a pretty, extensive planning, and a lot of participated, and we presented a plan. We always showed, you know, the creation of green space on both the east side and on the west side. So there was no goal, you know, to remove a park from the neighborhood. We're sensitive to that. It might help just to give the background, you know, so we looked at how we could create a larger development. This started out with just acquiring the administrative buildings from the school district, and we looked at the opportunity. You know, the Chalmers building is in rough condition and only getting worse. So the total tax base of all this is, so we started looking at how do we do something a little more mass to it. So a lot of this is about flexibility. This isn't about a desire to limit a park. We think a park will be there, it should be there, so we don't have an issue saying the city can decide that, meaning it could stay where it is. The potential that maybe it moves north, you know, if you go through studies and work with the neighborhood and everybody's on board with that, the city, we're fine with the city having that ultimate sole discretion to do that. And we are talking with MATC, you know, we can't say publicly where they're at, process to go through, but there are a number of land swaps we've looked at. They have some parking structures within that, within those same parcels. There's 3 rows of parking, and there's another one that goes the other way. So we believe there's going to be some swaps. So our concern is not being overly restricted, and or there's not desire to put buildings up against 72nd Street. It's about having some flexibility to make the development along the 70th you know, as flexible and optimized as possible in a way that's, you know, the city's going to be proud of. We're not, so that's the goal. I just want to make sure that the message is clear. So we're looking for that flexibility. It could very well be at some point, MATC, we've had conversations about that particular location, and that could become a park, and I think that will work out fine. We've shown that. Yeah. So it's really about flexibility to optimize the kind of development. The idea of collateral, you know, we're far into this process, and a lot of conversations about the development agreement and late in the process, but there was, you know, back in November, presentation development agreement and sort of a agreement in principle, subject to negotiation. I think a month or so ago there was another version. So a lot of this has been added protections from my perspective that the city's added. There's some things that I think the city's going to talk about that were added recently. So it's what's happened in the last kind of iteration, I think, has really protected the city, like the park and like some buyback rights, and you've got to default to the question that was asked. So but the collateral piece is, I mean, there's been entire financing done. This is part of New Market Tax Credits, TIF. We've been working for months and months and months toward closing, and there are deadlines that are coming up at the end of the month. So, you know, that's why it seems like it's rushed, but I don't know that. So the collateral piece, there's financing done and approved based on that land being rezoned, because if it's zoned as a park, there's not going to be a lot of. But what we're willing to do is contract back with the city that use stays there. So the end result, we think, is the same. City. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
So you just said you'd be willing to keep it?
Right now, what we talked about just briefly is the
zoning.
area that cross section, extending it south by adding about another acre, and then that will stay a park only, I mean, it will continue as a park until such time, if ever, that the city agrees that there'd be some relocation. And that could be done in conjunction with neighborhood meetings, and maybe there's a better solution there that, you know, through the development makes sense for everybody. And if not, then that's the city's discretion.
But you mentioned something about going back to a park designation right at the end of your conversation.
No, the zoning, the zoning is important for the reasons we described. It would have
By doing the rezoning, we get the best of both worlds.
This on the floor as well, is there's some collateral piece that I think is there other collateral that?
I don't think that's so much the issue as it's about the flexibility of what it does to some of the other land. Right? If you suddenly take all that out and you've got just the parcels there, there's no ability to kind of maximize development value. So it's really more about that. So, know if that's answered the question.
Yeah, I
mean,
think-
the rezoning is
yeah.
important, but again, we'll contract back. So I think
Dollars
you
and
get the
space,
same
right?
thing, right, and,
Yep.
and I think that, to John's point, you still have those protections, it's at the city's sole discretion, you have no say in that decision. And yet you have a little more tax base as well.
Segueing into that, if replacement park is located and approved by the city, developers agree to pay the first $300,000 to acquire that property. The next $100,000 will be paid by the city, and anything above that will be paid again by the developer. Both parties have to agree, so not an unlimited amount, but the developer or the city they both have to agree to that ultimate purchase price. But this is how it would end up being paid for.
Excuse me, I just want to give the school board credit that last night they offered to give the city $100,000 for the park, and that's what that money would.
Once the land's acquired, the city would be paying for the new park improvements to build up that park. And so like I said, the developer's input would be acquiring the parcel, the city would pay for the improvements. And then once, if any work would commence on the McKinley parcel, and once it's completed, whatever the revenue generated to the TIF there, that would increase or would be used as a developer's bond to assist in other development occurring on the east side of 70th Street. So that's just more of, if it's built up and creates more tax space, it'd be another leverage point to get some money out of it to allow additional work to occur on the east side. So that value would be immediately recognized within this project itself if development occurs on the north side of the park.
So there's no phase 1 and phase 2 anymore.
There's only a phase 1 specifically described in the agreement. There is an anticipated phase 2 shown in the pictures, I think, in Exhibit B. But it is not part of the agreement as far as there aren't any.
Yeah, but McKinley's part of phase 1.
Correct.
McKinley's part of phase 1.
Well, kind of. Like, it's related to the phase 1. It could have an impact on phase 1, but the real phase 1 is just the demolition of Ellis Chalmers and rebuilding of a hotel on that spot. Those are the two main parts of phase 1. McKinley could just provide an additional funding source for that phase 1.
Development at McKinley.
Correct. Final development at McKinley bringing the.
Would it happen before then? I mean, if it's somehow going to add bang for his buck, or financial strength for the development on the east side of 70th Street, then it's going to happen before.
Very quickly. It'd have to happen while this is going on, and before completion on the east side, in order to take advantage of whatever increment it would generate. So that's more of if that occurs.
It actually could go into phase. Phase 2 is outlined.
True. The money could be used later on as well. It's just, I guess
we're not relying for phase 1. Yeah, that's because I'm the way I'm understanding it is now that McKinley Park might not substantially change for a couple of years, right. Regardless of what it's zoned or who owns it. Okay. Not that the deal gets signed and the bulldozers come and McKinley Park is instantly a third. Yeah, McKinley's a third the size that it is today, right. And we don't even know what's going in there.
Yeah, until such time, all of the 5 acres continues to be operated by the city, and that's subject to. It's just that the area with the crosshatching is the one that triggers, but it can't be moved unless the city consents. There'd still be 6 months' notice, and we're focused honestly on the demolition of the hotel. And
no, I know, I understand.
Renovation of the school district. So I would think that's accurate. It's probably a couple years until that happens. So it is really a sense of phase 2 where that kicks in. And that's when those obligations, if there is a relocation and rebuild, however that happens, that the city agrees to, then that is paid for out of that development.
Okay. And I see the minimum 1 acre parcel. Okay.
That's changed.
That was in the agreement. I'm trying to summarize the agreement itself as it was presented. However, that is no longer the 1 acre parcel and the boundary agreement, and as for that matter, the purchase price, are not contingencies any longer. Now it's simply parcel approved by the city as a replacement parcel. Use your discretion as to what you think is appropriate.
So we're not talking
Now
about
it's
copper.
at 1.5.
We're not talking about copper.
if the city would approve that, but the city would have to be the one who approved that if it's
The
acceptable.
city could
replacement.
approve it on an 8-2 vote, conceivably.
Yes, I mean, it would be a majority vote to approve it.
Any part.
Yes.
So that's the gist of it, but yes, and I guess the reason I was asking a question that way is I feel it's more my duty to give you sort of worst case scenario type stuff, like this is a possibility, however unlikely it might be. So I just want to make sure you're aware of it as a very unlikely but possible outcome.
Well, sorry to interject, just tell me if I'm out of line. We'd have no issue if that replacement park was limited geographically. We had that. We just figured if it's sole discretion, then the city would decide. But if there's concern, we'd be willing to stipulate that's.
Just to get into the dense stuff here, there is a contingency that if the hotel does not start by December 1st this year, then that TIF guarantee collateral, that letter of credit and that cash deposit, whatever it ends up being, must be increased to cover any shortfall that was not anticipated in the original projections. So whatever the shortfall is, they have to increase the letter of credit or cash to cover that. And it's a rolling 3-year period, meaning so for as long as that's occurring, they have to project out 3 years and have that projected debt covered. So that's just one protection that's in place that would kick in this year. Whatever the cash deposit would be, that would be paid out first before any letter of credit would be tapped. And then there's an agreement to have a minimum assessed value of $21.1 million for the development site. Now that would be inclusive of the entire project. And so if $21.1 million of assessed value is generated, my understanding is that covers our debt service, but also it would result in a certain amount of TIF payments coming in that would help fund the project. And if that occurs and the assessment goes above it, any excess increment that's generated could be used for parking structures or other infrastructures or other costs approved by the city. And of course, this is subject to the city's underwriting and a few other contingencies. But of course, if the assessment goes over 21.1 million, that means things are going quite well.
And this
That's
is
detailed
essentially
as
phase
Exhibit
two.
J, or Exhibit I.
So although it's not identified anywhere as phase 2, that would be the long term where we're going if the development's approved. And until the district would be terminated, all the increment generated here has some sort of payment to debts, to debt service, infrastructure, just keeps getting recycled into this area as further investment is made. And there's a lot of different, I don't even start parsing them out because it'd be too long of a list. There's all kinds of situations in which that TIF payment that would come in would be immediately turned around into the area itself. On the financial side of it, developers bring in a little over $2 million in equity for the phase 1 project. There's going to be a $1.1 million escrow that's going to happen from the loan that will be given to the developer on the east side. This does not include the school district buildings, but includes the Allis Chalmers and the parking lots and the Kinley related to that entity that we owning those things, those parcels. The $1.1 million will be held in escrow. It's again one more security that the city would have, so that unless a hotel loan commitment is received by December 1st, or if it's not received by then, the again letter of credit or cash is increased to cover the debt service shortfall, then it can extend it out till 2023. But if neither one of those two things happens, then that $1.1 million is actually then taken back by the city and applied to the loan's principal to reduce the cost of debt service. So it's essentially just a $1.1 million additional carrot that really encourages the developer to take action by December. However, it is not out of the question either that might last up to 3.5 years longer if certain contingencies are met. So just wanted you to be aware of both of those options.
This is part of the 7.2, not in addition.
Correct. So of the original loan, $1.1 million is being held. There is a pilot agreement in place. So when the TIF district would terminate, 20 years later, it could not be tax exempt or a pilot would be due. Sorry about that.
Back on that.
Yep. So
After the close of the TIF district, so the TIF district closes in 25, this is good for 45 years?
Or maybe longer, who knows? There are TIF districts out there who are
28.
on 38, 40
How do
years
you,
27.
how do you enforce a pilot? Well, 27, but,
by statute right now.
but,
the
but,
limit.
but hasn't that, the TIF has not begun yet? Because you haven't spent any money, correct?
I think the TIF is
is
created.
And last
That's what I thought,
July.
so it's about 25
clock's
years
already-
left.
the clock's-
Yeah,
26
27 year
years.
total life.
Yep, yes, we have about 25, 26 years left. How do we enforce that? Is that written into every parcel deed? Or
Yes, so the agreement will be recorded. It will be a covenant running with the land. All these restrictions will apply to any subsequent owners unless the city would release any terms.
got it.
But along the way, as things are being satisfied, terms will drop off. Just depends on when they're satisfied and if they're done in time.
And the pilots, the city share and the school district share, or just the city share?
It's not identified.
I think that's up to how.
Right now, it would be construed as 100%, but we didn't say
So,
lesser
so we,
percent.
MATC would get theirs and,
I would think it would be 100% just simply how it's worded, just because it's not defined to be any less.
Well, the TIF is in place, nobody gets it. all
No,
goes
yeah,
to
it
TIF.
goes
So
back
then
into it, but once
after,
the
the
TIF's
city would make that.
so for
determination.
20 years after the TIF.
So the city would make that.
Who's gonna be here in 25 years?
That'd be close, I don't know.
I'll be in my 80s.
Guys in the back row.
The, part of the requirement also is developer has to provide annual statements, financials that are ongoing at the parcels. There's also a provision that discusses profit sharing. So if the developer has a higher rate of return than what is projected or expected, I guess, within a reasonable range, then a portion of the profits would then be actually shared back with the city. And as well as if there are savings on the construction costs that are beyond a certain level, there'd be profit sharing that would occur. I wouldn't anticipate that being likely, but you never know. If it's a really successful project, then it could come into play. Then the phase one, that guarantee number again was in your original document. However, that number has, in a later iteration, has increased to 21.1 million as well, with the notion of an adjustment down to as low as 18.9 million if a certain tax rate increase occurs within the city. So I'll again show you that amendment later on as to how that would work out.
That would generate more property taxes, why.
Then the that letter of credit, and so again, because it was just to be determined within the agreement that you received that was published, you'll have to decide on the combination of letter of credit and cash and determine how you want to address that. There's also going to be an option, and I'll present that later. Letter of credit would be released though when the tax increment is at least 120% of the costs. So as soon as they start covering costs and really getting underway, that letter of credit could disappear. If the construction schedule that's proposed by the developer is the ideal schedule, if all that schedule, it could be letter of credit's gone within a year, 2 years.
Because you need second year.
Oh yeah, I guess it would have to come around. So
This is a typical bank type of loan. Not necessarily letter of credit, but the 1.2% debt coverage ratio.
So there are terms for default. So if there's a default that occurs, that basically means if the agreement's not being followed, for example, not beginning the construction on the demolition site, also failure to increase the line of credit or cash as required by the agreement, failure to restore it if it has to be tapped, or even just failure to renew the line of credit, whatever that might be. Those are all very specific defaults in the agreement. And there's more general ones just about material breaches and being insolvent. One specific remedy that was included in this agreement is a repurchase right for the properties that are owned by West Quarter East, which is everything except the school buildings. So it'd be the park, it'd be the 2 parking lots, and it'd be the Allis Chalmers property. That makes up 16.76 acres of the 18.21. And so if there is a default, it's going to be years down the road if this would occur, but if there's a default on that completion date for phase one, then the city could exercise its right to take title to all those parcels. Now, there are some very unique parts of it in that all liens must be paid at closing. meaning that it'd be theoretically, if it comes down to it, where the city needs to acquire it, there's likely a lot of debt that's going to be associated with the properties, which means that the city would have to come up with the cash to pay a lot of third-party creditors,
Contract.
the contractors, banks, or whomever. So if it comes to the situation, it's a tool that's out there, it's available. However, it would require a lot of cash up front. And at the same time, the developer would be released from all liability under that. We'd exercise that right as a city. As far as its viability, it's sort of the nuclear option, where if things have gone terribly wrong and this is the best financial situation, it's nice to have in the agreement. It's not something that would be exercised lightly. Have to be all things have gone terrible type situation. So for the most part, it's going to be, if there are any breaches, notice of default or notice of breach, and then encouraging the developer to correct that breach, and vice versa. If the city would breach something, notice of breach. That's typically what I would expect from something like this. But again, there is an option in case things do go haywire.
So, and we own the land, or pay the liens and pay for the land?
Pay $1 for the land,
Pay $1 for the land and
pay all the
cover-
liens in full,
Pay all the liens in full,
and then
and then we
tell the owner.
and we own it for the land for $1.
Not likely, but
No,
it's one of
no,
those
this is
nuclear-
like you said, nuclear.
other basket of protections that we have available to us.
Is probably the last stop when it comes to remedies, where if nothing else has worked out there as an option, again, I would say it's highly unlikely to have to ever exercise that.
We'll be releasing the developer each time they sell property so that they can get them unencumbered. So that
Yep. So if any parcels would be sold, they would not become part of that. They would be sold like a clean title and taken care of and removed from the agreement. But whatever remains, though, would still be subject to that provision.
And these timelines that we're seeing are all based on approval this week?
Some of the timelines have been around for some time. Some have been changing. To be honest with you,
I just saw June 1st date there.
Yeah, so there's one provision that just simply says the project must begin by June 1st, and that could be just the phase one project of starting to demolish or remove the tenants and starting to demolish.
Well, yeah,
the
because
property.
phase one really starts with remodeling
Yeah, so it
school
gets,
district building.
the idea is just to get going very quickly. That's why it's a short timeline, and it wouldn't take a lot.
all the timelines are, assuming we approve this, like we had originally planned at the end of this month or as soon as we can. Because the longer we wait, I'll let the developer respond to that. But if we push this back longer, contractors fall off, market change.
Markets do change.
All that stuff. And the more time we take, the more risk we incur. And so that's why we're trying to get this done as quickly as possible to get things to move expeditiously. Do you have any other comments, Scott, on that issue?
Well, no, I mean, we've got PNC's term sheet, Fire's term sheet, various property parcels. I mean, we have to close by the end of. I mean, we've been working at it a long time. There's some evolution in some ways. But again, I think a lot of what's been added here are actions for the city.
We probably got 20 lawyers working tonight
Oh,
on
yeah,
this,
well,
on the new market
Market
tax
tax
side. So
rates.
we're rigging up the bell.
calls every 2 weeks with probably 25 attorneys and accountants and so forth. But the 6/1 date is, every date has a little bit
No,
of cushion,
there's-
right? But I mean, we have contractors, they're ready to go. They want to be in. I mean, they've pulled off jobs, so they're ready to start. I mean, all of our facade work on the buildings, all the TI work that's going to be done to transfer tenants is all done. Most of it permitted. Ready.
Just a few miscellaneous things. A lot of standard stuff. Force majeure would apply. So any deadlines you're seeing today, if there was some very obscure weather or civil unrest event, could delay. But other than that, this is basically boilerplate stuff. Most important one on this, I would say, is the agreement that it's going to be recorded against the property and a covenant running with the land. So all the restrictions would apply to subsequent owners. And that also cannot be assigned, except the construction lenders without the city's approval. Now, these were some of the changes that were proposed prior. To be honest with you, they have changed. So I'm not going to get into it too much. I can get into it later. In fact, wish I'd known about it. Anyway, so the next couple slides here are going to be what
I'm gonna ask the committee to make some decisions on. And one of them is required, that's the letter of credit and cash for the TIF guarantee collateral. That's the only one that's really required. The rest of them are things that are either recommended or proposed, and it's really up to the committee. I don't know if the chair has any thoughts on how to proceed, if they want to just consider this one by one, or
I would say one by one. Is this something you want to do in open session, or you want to go into closed session?
unless anyone has any questions additionally, I can present them in open session. I don't see any reason not to right now.
Okay, good.
Questions so far have not been of the type where a closed session is necessary. But if it comes up, ask that. So technically, in order to do this, there'd have to be a motion to approve the development agreement to then amend it. I don't know if there's a motion to approve the development agreement, make it pending.
Sure, sure. So this is a Safety and Development Committee
Yes.
meeting, correct? So 5 of us wouldn't have any input on it, correct,
Yes.
right now?
Oh,
Okay, that's all right.
comments, yes, but the votes, no.
Now, in terms of going through the amendments one by one, I personally would I think it would be wise to go into closed session to discuss these things, but can we just hear what the amendments would be in open session and then go into closed and then afterwards take all the votes, or?
Sure, if there are questions that
It's
are,
up to Mr. Chair, of course, but I'm just thinking.
That's fine. Whatever the committee wants to do, whatever you're comfortable with.
so I can explain them first, and if there are questions that would require closed session, or someone wants to make a motion, the only restriction would be it was noticed for public land and public dollars and negotiating position related to those two. So just, if you make the motion, understand that will be the limit of the closed session discussion. So the first one is not substantive. Wanted to start with a nice easy one. It's referred to in there as the City of West Allis Recreation Department, and it should say School District Recreation Department. So that is one amendment that I'll be asking for that shouldn't be too much of a problem. But then the subsequent ones here. And actually the first one has now changed as well because of the change to the McKinley Park situation. So that is actually no longer applicable. Instead, it's going to have to relate back to the 1.6 acres on the south end of McKinley Park. We'll have to redraw a map. They'll actually show that on Exhibit J. But the motion would eventually be to change that out and create the 1.6 acre parcel, and then make it subject to the city's sole approval to replace that park. Second one, though, is still applicable. Essentially, the developer proposed $1 million combination of cash and letter of credit. And so they could select either cash or letter of credit to fulfill that $1 million amount collateral. And that would essentially be a letter of credit in which the city could draw upon, or cash that's held by the city for the idea of covering any debt shortfalls. Second, staff had recommended at one point an $800,000 amount of cash set aside, a $500,000 letter of credit. And again, the developer, I don't believe, agreed to those terms. So it'd be one or the other, the first two. As an alternative, the city came up with an idea to agree with the $1 million combination letter of credit and cash, which would likely just be mostly cash. But in exchange, reducing all the deadlines for hotel development 2 years. And what that does is ensures that the lower amount of money that would be kept by the city would be enough to cover the timeline in which the hotel must be constructed. So it was just an alternative that was brought up as an option. Again, the developer did not agree to the second or third option, but it'd be up to the committee to decide what to do with it.
Did Scott want to comment on
Can I
that?
just talk about the letter of credit? So the letter of credit is really important to me because cash is there and it's gone. The letter of credit, there's a requirement. That's something that the hotel got delayed, we would definitely have. And as we were talking through those alternatives, we had posed that the developer a little bit, and he is definitely interested in that bottom item, perhaps something like
I'm
moving the hotel.
definitely interested, but I'll go along.
Interested in, I didn't say you agreed, interested, he's interested in, perhaps the hotel has to start by 2021 rather than 2023. And that would bring some comfort on my perspective where we could lower that to $1 million. And I know there's also some concern on the combination. And the letter of credit is important, but we could do something like a 400, 600. I think we could make it work.
Yeah, and again, I'm glad to talk here, take this off for closed session, but we could live with that proposed alternative. I'd like to propose 700, 300, only because there's some restrictions on cash held and under the new market tax credits, and John does too. So we could do 700, 300, it still gives that, and that's about a year. And still the obligation to replenish the letter of credit. In fact, the amount that could have to replenish could go up because it's based on that 3-year
after
window.
90,
Right, so
right
it's
after
based on 3-year
19,
window,
December of
right,
19.
yeah.
It'll be
So it's not
decreased.
limited to 300. The next round, if we didn't develop, looks at a rolling 3-year requirement. So if suddenly it goes up, that letter of credit has to be higher. You're not limited to just the starting. So at 700, 300, we would agree to move up.
Or 650.
There you go. We're at 50-50 now.
Right.
So I must have heard about this just with the nick of time to add this slide to show that the Exhibit J that was handed out or was published only showed that smaller park area. And hopefully this is an illustration I think that's easier to describe, showing where the green area was and where I'd ask the council to amend Exhibit J to show the full south there and make that the official park area. And I think this is one that the developer did agree to. The one of the parts of the development agreement you saw had a requirement that the developer waive an objection to vacating right of way. That was an issue that was not a big issue, I think, for either party. So that can simply be stricken if the council want to do so. The developer did not agree to it as it was worded, but did propose an alternative that was slightly different in that they would have the ability to still object in some manner. So, frankly, it'd be easier to probably just simply eliminate it and rely on the law allows for vacation of right of way.
So I got a question on that. So if we,
And maybe this is not
Go back to the last.
So maybe more context.
well,
would be-
my understanding is that we have to automatically provide any parcel of land access to the public street network.
It's
okay.
really a limited provision.
Right. So we put this in there and say we've got the right to do this. Obviously, there's some things we can't. So by state law, we're what I'm saying is I wouldn't see a problem with allowing us to vacate right away because we're going to guarantee access.
This is about the gas.
Yeah,
main?
our concern, if I may, was it was pre-agreed, and the concern we had if we identified a site for replacement park, automatic concern was if that cut off access to the balance of the development. The area you talked about, for instance, the user, there may be other access. I mean, to me, we were going to propose a site. It had to be sufficient anyway that it wouldn't have to right of way.
Mm-hmm.
So if it didn't, we'd probably work with you anyway to say use the right of way, and we'd all agree, or you'd say no. So I don't know that the pre-agreement was the issue. We don't have a problem with the concept. Pre-agree.
We probably won't need it because it would, this part here would go to this parcel, the other part would go to MHC parcel. This way, if we bought the MHC parcel, we want a little extra land, we would get it. We don't need.
How does Michael's access this area? Not Michael's.
Dawes.
Dawes. Thank you.
I think
No,
Walker
Walker
Street.
jogs.
Walker Street goes.
Oh yeah, off to the north.
Walker
Farther north.
That's right.
But so,
Thank
it's something
you.
we don't need anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it's that.
Yeah. So it was not of major consequence to either party. So I don't think it's really an issue. But to strike it would be probably easiest. And then that last part, this has to do with the nuclear option. Basically, the idea would be to add this sentence at the end of it. which says that upon the sale of parcels to third parties, those parcels would be released from this obligation, so that if a third party bought it and then 5 years down the road the development went under, they would not have lose their parcel that they bought and paid for as good faith purchasers. That would be released from this automatic repurchase option, the dollar repurchase.
We're keeping this on the developer. Focus
city
on the
shall or
developer's
may?
performance.
Well, I mean, from our perspective, any lender, but it would also be if we develop vertical development, we can't have, so we're gonna do an office sites and that lender's never gonna, something doesn't happen, parcels and stuff. So it would have to be on a sale or upon vertical development in connection with construction financing.
Well, and we would only want to take it back if there wasn't,
Yeah,
something in
right,
progress, the
right.
vertical development in progress. So, probability if it's sold to a third party, it's being developed, and we wouldn't want to stop that. We would want that to continue on.
And if,
Or if it's us, I mean, we.
and if this developer's gonna do it, that they gotta get waived if they got the lender to approve the financing. Maybe we need to add in there upon approved financing for the,
Yeah, I mean, approval of that vertical development and the financing being put in place. Because we'll often, we don't just spin these parcels off necessarily. I mean, we stay involved in the project, so. But again, it's, at that point, you've got, said you're not worried about it at that point.
The land isn't sold, but is transferred to another entity, a bank.
Well, the terms have yet to be approved, so this was an example I put together, again, last second when I heard the objections to
Would
it.
we want sale or transfer written in there?
Trying to think of a transfer in which you wouldn't want it. The real thing is to make sure it's an unrelated party. Or
I'm just thinking a bank takes over a piece of land for some reason, something happens with a loan or.
I'd have to anticipate that a bank that's lending money might need that.
If I can, the only comment I'd add, this one, our lender reviewed, that's why we came back with some responses. It's a little problematic, right, for a lender because they're relying on, they're lending a lot of money for development and they're relying on the fact that we're gonna develop finance. So, that causes some concern to them. As long as it's released, I think we're okay. I don't think we need to transfer. I mean, I don't think the city necessarily would want it. You prefer to have it as limited as possible, so I'm not gonna negotiate on your behalf, but I would, I think for us, we need the sale, and if we do construction financing for development, it would have to come out because.
And if it was a bank, we would pay off the mortgage. That's the other part of the clause, is we would pay off that mortgage permanently. So a bank, they don't do things along with it, so we would still pay that off. So a transfer probably wouldn't be applicable.
Yeah, the bank's objection here isn't because that would get paid off. Their objection is a chilling effect on some other development because it's too onerous. So as long as we can be clear on that.
That is it. Now,
There's one more issue, and that was the negotiation of the threshold, the TID threshold at that 21 million based on the tax rate.
oh yeah, that was a slide that I did not get a chance to make. There was language, I think, written by, I'm not sure which attorney wrote it, but there was language proposed basically saying that the $21.1 million would be the guaranteed amount, but it would be reduced to as low as 18.9 million, which was the original amount that the city agreed to, or staff agreed to during negotiations, except it would be reduced only if the tax rate would increase by 3%. So not nominal 3, but relative 3. So 2.864, I think was the number I remember, was the tax rate. So if it increased to 2.914 or something.
Let's talk $28. It's 28 per
Yeah.
thousand right now. If it goes up to 29 per thousand, this would kick in.
And then it
They're
would,
just not used to hearing the other percentages.
got it.
Because we agreed, and the reason it's important to us is that that's the threshold for phase 2. And so when we entered into the agreement, the mill rate was 30 plus, and there was what I think is an anomalous blip in that, and it'll come back up. And so you don't need as much increment to get the same cash flow. So we had asked for a one-time look. And it's got to be more than 3%. We're not trying to be unreasonable if it goes up, 10 cents. But That's really how this was projected, I think, was back to that. And that just allows the lower threshold, it gets the same cash into the city, but the threshold for the phase 2 development, where there's future MRO developer funded, we're bringing it back down. So, I mean, it allows it to kick in sooner to help facilitate the second phase. It doesn't any dollars out of the city's pocket.
It just depends. I mean,
Yeah,
phase
you
one.
could get more,
right,
but it's the number
right.
you bargained for.
So it just gives the city less control over that, and it also doesn't take into consideration depreciation or anything like that. Buildings like that don't typically appreciate, they depreciate, so a little bit extra increment. I was thinking of it as a cushion, it's not a deal breaker.
Unless I think I've missed anything.
Any other questions for Mr. Decker? Or any questions for Peggy or Mr. Yawk?
Not open,
Not an open session.
not an open session.
So
You have,
what-
you
what
have
do we gotta-
questions for closed session?
I think so.
This would be it'd be proper for closed session to discuss entering into amendments to change the development agreement, because obviously there would be some, there'd be some interest in open, frankly discussing what do you think the best options are for the city. So it'd be in order to do so. Then all the votes would have to occur in open session.
Okay,
But
then,
can I ask a question of the developer?
sure.
Can you go back to the acreages on the park? Or not the acreages on the park, but the,
Thing?
do you have anything showing more of that area, or is that it?
Very beginning.
Way early, you had all those.
That one?
Earlier, there was one with,
Showing all of
that one is all of them, if that's helpful. Getting
Yeah,
your bearings, but the middle one is the
This is McKinley.
Yeah. That's 1.7, the size of MATC.
A little more than 1.5.
The reason for wanting this piece of park to be deeper?
Yeah, that and, well, if you look, we're a portion of 7, right? No, because 4 and 5 are technically the ones we have. So some development there, I mean, you can see what it does for flexibility, as well as flexibility with the ones that are carved out, that are the MATC parking lots, some ability to move things around is really how I think this will play out over time.
Yeah.
Wouldn't a big rectangle be more valuable?
Yeah, I mean, and agreed, you know, and that's why what I think happens is,
Which big rectangle?
well, I
Well-
think where you're going is
This
move
one,
the
this
park
one,
up
this one?
to 8, right?
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
And I very well think that could be where we end up.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, I just don't know that agreeing now, I mean, there's been bank underwriting, if we can leave it where it is, well, one, the operations there don't have to get moved, so it saves the cost till we know, and then if that becomes the plan, the city's got a pretty good.
I think one of the concerns is neighborhood parks are considered 3 acres or more. Mini parks
Yeah.
are around 1 acre, 1 to 3. And what,
Yeah, 1.6 is a pocket park.
right. And so trying to keep a larger park area,
I mean, for now, to continue like we talked about for, I don't wanna represent how long, I can't contract, again, these things start to, the wider way it's underwritten, you start putting all these restrictions and it becomes an issue, so, as a practical matter, all of those 6, 7, and 8. Now, you know, we'll start to figure out what the development plan is, I think we'll have conversations about what's the best solution, and the city would have to agree, and at that point, you know, it very well could be, I tend to think that's the most efficient.
And the building east of 8 is, you're not even looking at, that's,
No, yeah,
so that's a pretty new building and
Yeah,
it's
correct.
pretty high value.
Mr. Chairman,
Alderman Barzak.
so 6, 7, and 8 will stay that way. If we rezone it, it's still going to stay that way, and it's still going to be a park. And at some time, when you start to develop 5 and 6, and possibly figure out what happens up on the top, and we don't like it, we have the right to continue to hold 6, 7, and 8 just as they are.
He's not developing 6.
6 and 7.
6
So-
and 7.
6 and part of
Part
7.
of 7.
So
6
part
is
of
part of
7.
7.
Only a small part of 7.
Okay, so then I'm misunderstanding.
I think the other map might be better to show
Yeah.
that. So if you go,
No, I saw that. I know what you're talking about.
yeah, so this one.
Yep.
You see how 7 is kind of cut up?
Yes.
in this version.
You know, I'm just going to rephrase my question again. From what I thought I heard him say, is that for the next 2-3 years, well, not guaranteed, that, and I wish I was back on the other side, that that whole area, if you please, would go back. That 6, 7, and 8 would not be touched. It would stay as is, the same park, and the city still would have to make the final determination of where the final park will be. Even though we're
No, he gets
guaranteed
eight
to
right
have the
away.
lower part, we're guaranteed to have that,
Well,
but that
it's
might
also
not be
no
the
risk.
end. It may
Correct.
move.
So if you can draw a line kind of where it says 1,000 there on.
Yep, I totally get that. That part's guaranteed.
Just
Yeah.
south of-
However, we have the right to change it because it may move up. So parcel 8 is never, ever, ever, ever going to be considered to be a park.
Parcel 8 will remain a park for as long as the developer does not give us a 6-month notice.
He can give a 6-month notice and do what he wants.
But until we have an overall plan, we won't, but you're right.
But theoretically.
Parcel
we could-
8 and half of 7.
We
Right.
could end up taking 8 at MATC across the street, vacate the street and get a bigger park.
That is my point.
So that's what I thought you were going to.
We have final say of where the park will go.
We have final say. Now, we have to talk with the developer about selling 8.
Absolutely.
But
But
we have
final
that-
say.
that- After that, it's only our choice as to if it moves.
We would lose that right, something developed before we made that,
So-
because only the bottom half of 7 and 6 are the ones to be.
The only thing that's guaranteed to stay park is 6 and the
And
bottom.
half of 7,
and
bottom
half
of 7.
That's correct.
So I think
If it's still
Bottom
open,
third.
it would.
your question really is a timing issue, in that if a replacement for 6 and part of 7 is determined to be the MATC parcel and number 8 before development occurs on 8, then that would be a viable way of doing it, at least physically. But if the development on 8 occurs before there's any talk of a replacement park, then it would not be available to develop those together. So it's really a timing issue there as to whether development, when development occurs on 8 and when a replacement park is determined, one has to happen first and then it's going to eliminate the other option.
But we have the right to determine what goes on 8, or we lose all of our right after we.
We lose the right with a 6-month heads up. So if the notice
Okay.
was given 6 months from now, we're going to terminate this use as a park. It's going to be developed. I guess theoretically, you could talk to the developer about, well, what is your plan? Because what if we want to combine them? Can we? I mean, I guess theoretically you could at least negotiate, but ultimately, with a 6-month notice, the train leaves the station at that point.
Just to be clear and on record, I mean, there's no plan to independently do something like 8. We don't do auto parts and a lot of those conversations that came up to be there. I think it'll happen in conjunction. Again, the issue becomes too many restrictions and it kills the whole fight. So the way I see this happening, we're gonna focus on, again, administrative buildings, east side, bring the right development on the west side and work together to figure out how we optimize all that, including land swaps at MATC, and there's gonna be a whole nother conversation.
Final question. The part number 6 there and the little bottom of 7 was how many acres again? It was 1 point something?
1.6.
1.6. So we have the potential to lose 5.2 acres of park, but we get guaranteed 1.6. That just, to me, does not seem fair. Just in my eye.
Just one quick comment. Don't forget the northern 2, number 8, was all industrial that we
I understand
just
that.
put into the park.
Understood that.
It was all farm fields at one time.
As a point of
Understood that.
reference.
Well, and if there's a
we've-
desire to relocate it, I mean, the city might say it's gotta be, do that if you. I mean, there's a lot more that will happen. And, I mean, this started out where we bought, contracted without any park fund, and even the creation of the increment is increasing what we have to create.
One last question. And now, Promise I'll be done. We're getting a lot thrown at us here. A lot thrown at us, and we have a lot of amendments, and we have a lot of stuff to consider. I looked at the calendar, and we want to close by the end of the month, and I noticed that there's another Tuesday, the 26th of March. Is it possible to have another council meeting on March 26th with only this on the agenda?
Or even in 2 days.
Yeah, well, you have to have like 48 hours notice for an
24.
agenda for 24 hours. For me to make my decision right now, it is really, 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 really tough. And I think I know which way I'd vote right now. But I'm just throwing that out for consideration so we can get everything finalized. You know, we're thinking that this is right, but we're going to maybe change this, and we should change this, but we're not sure about this. And I mean,
Your point is well taken, and I think that was the major issues to why I delayed the publication of the development agreements. I wanted it to be in as close of a form as possible for this committee's consideration. Yet also I didn't want to delay until the very last second and drop something with 40 pages on you with no ability to go through it. It was not an easy balance. I did my best with what I had, but the idea of delaying a few days and giving me a chance to incorporate all the changes that the developer and the city have agreed to, and only leave the committee with the options that have not been agreed to, would simplify things a lot. I don't know what the availability of council is.
Everybody available next week, Tuesday?
Yes.
Or even Thursday if we needed to go faster.
yes.
And I don't know what the developer's
I'm not
timeline
available
is
Thursday.
on it.
Tuesday's fine.
License and health, but I think we.
Next, Mr. Chair.
Next Tuesday.
Or this
26th.
Thursday.
This Thursday I'm not available.
Oh, okay.
26th.
I already have 104 that night.
Can have it at Benno's.
Okay.
We can meet here because
Oh, yeah.
Meet
No, meet right in here.
yeah, we can meet here.
We can have a council
Monday
meeting in
works
here.
too.
6 p.m.
Yeah, that would even be 6.
That's fine.
26.
Yes.
26 at 6.
It's not good.
I bet he can make anything happen.
I'm not trying to, I get, where everyone's at, we
Are you
Mr.
prepared?
Chair?
I mean,
I mean, I think we've at least I think we've agreed on staff. I don't realize there's a lot of people, I'm not trying to be presumptuous, everybody else have it.
What day is this? You said the 26th is
Mr. Chair.
next Tuesday?
Monday you want? And is Monday better?
Monday better?
Monday's fine for me too.
Could we do Friday during the day? I can make myself available. I don't know who else can.
I can. I just do Friday evening?
In the afternoon.
I can't
Friday.
do Friday evening.
Late afternoon.
I'm
Just right during lunch.
I'm out of town on Friday. I'm meeting with a developer.
Saturday?
I'm out of town on Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Monday works too. Monday
Monday
afternoon
works for me.
works.
I'm home all next.
Mr. Chair,
the 26th?
I would like to know
He
exactly
needs time too.
what would be the difference, really, what would been discussed tonight. What would be adding any more a week from now? What would be the
Time to
Yeah.
read it.
Give a time to read 40 pages, Vince.
It gives people
I mean,
And ask
time
some
to
questions.
digest 40
time to
pages,
digest
eh?
what's-
That's only the reason, right?
Yes.
Unless you just
That's
want to vote
the
no
only
right
Time to
now.
digest.
That's my vote right now. So,
I would incorporate the changes as soon as possible.
Right.
And deliver an agreement that's as agreed to by the parties, and then a separate document that would say what the points of contention are.
Call it red line, blue line.
Monday
There'll be
afternoon
color,
works
that
too.
you'll be able to see what's changed from today.
In evening.
Thursday afternoon?
Thursday afternoon works for me.
During the day.
They can quit.
Late
Couple hours,
afternoon,
come on.
maybe.
Yeah, 3 o'clock or something?
4?
On what day?
Thursday? Yeah, make it 4. We
I got up 5.
Oh, 3?
Well, Thursday.
I can make
Thursday
any
is
time Thursday.
Board of Health.
So I was thinking 3.
We get enough people that can meet.
3 o'clock?
Yeah, 3
Can
o'clock.
everybody make 3 o'clock
Which
Thursday?
day now?
Thursday.
Thursday.
What's this?
This coming Thursday?
Yeah.
The 21st. Yes, I can do
Okay
that.
with you?
Yeah.
Have a
Wait,
doctor's
3 o'clock?
appointment in the morning, I'm good.
So we're talking March 21st.
21st, 3 o'clock.
Does that give everybody time to drive over to McKinley Park and walk around and take a look at it?
I just did on Google Maps.
Yeah, that's not the same.
I umpired softball there for many years, so I'm well aware of it.
My kids played T-ball.
I developed a little league diamond there too, so.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't know, are we going to the closed session? I mean, are we,
Yes, I think we have to. We want to make decisions on these amendments so that.
and I'm just wondering, is there a point at which we might get an idea of what might happen, what the use is gonna be at 6 or 7 and 8? What, I mean,
Not part of the agreement.
okay.
I'm hoping that will be discussed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we can't contract when or limit, but go through closings and we're really out in the marketplace, right? And with demolition on the east side, that's gonna create, it's gonna transfer
Oh, no, I,
look like, and so,
no doubt that,
yeah,
yeah.
we'll wait for the right use. We're not, there's nothing ready to just rush in there, but we can't. There was a month or so ago, I mean, the development agreement did come back, and so we, with that, that's when financing was approved. So all I could ask, I know it's gonna digest it, but a lot of fine tuning this problem. I mean, if there's major issues, we'll address those. We've been, all these eyes have reviewed this, so it is what it is.
Thursday at 3.
I got a question, a couple questions yet. Regarding zoning and spot zoning, would that 6 and portion of 7 become one parcel? Or how does spot zoning work? Let's say we want to take the MATC land and rezone it park, even though there's a building on it.
The notion of spot zoning is more of the idea of changing zoning for one parcel.
That's
For the express purpose of some exchange with the owner, very specifically, and it does not comport with the adjacent zoning. This would actually be lining up adjacent zoning, so I would not call this.
well, I want to go somewhere else with this. So,
Certified survey map?
well,
There would likely be divisions of parcels that would occur.
well, here's what I'm going with it. A neighborhood park is 3 acres. And I think we'd want in the agreement that there be a, at minimum 3 acre contiguous piece of land that may or may not include a ballpark. And if we could keep 8 as park and zone the land MATC is on also as park, could we do that? Not tonight, but we could do 8 tonight, but we couldn't do.
Where your
My
financing deal?
understanding is 8 is currently not zoned park.
No.
I thought 8,
That's
I thought
gonna
8
clear us
was.
financing.
I think 8 is.
You said
zone
7 and
park.
8 was both zoned park.
No.
No,
That was in the
We
presentation.
changed that in November.
I thought it was.
voted on that last year.
We changed that in
That was
November.
last year.
November. we
I
did.
thought 6, the bottom of 6 was C3, but the other 2 were.
I thought 7 was
Park.
what was zoned park.
I thought 8 was as well.
No.
Is that
We
thing-
changed 8 in November.
My question is, how do we come in and create another park that's a good continuous 3 acre neighborhood park that includes a ballpark?
Well, under the current agreement, that would be that the council has to make a decision on, is to simply not approve a park other than a 3 acre park.
It doesn't mean 3 acre park. In the end, it has to become a 3 acre
Correct.
parcel, right?
So to replace the 1.6 acre parcel, you simply would either keep it at that location at 1.6 acres or not approve anything else until 3 acre parcel is located.
As it's written now, we can do that, or do we have to put the language in 3 acre continuous site that will accommodate a ballpark?
As
I
of right
I
now,
would leave the word ballpark off of
Yeah.
there, just say 3 acre.
I don't
And let
want a
the
3
neighborhood-
acre
Well, we.
ribbon.
Spaghetti.
Good word.
The
Yeah.
Hank Aaron Bike Trail, 3 acres for the Hank.
There you go.
so to answer your
It has to be a
question,
functional piece of land.
to answer your question, the last proposal that was received tonight from the developer was it would be upon the council's approval. So if the council wanted to approve treehouse on the Hank Aaron, that'd be fine. Or if they wanted to wait and find a contiguous 3 acre parcel that would work for a ball field, that's also appropriate. It would be at the sole discretion of the council. So to the extent that you and colleagues want a specific style, arrangement, or acreage park, you'd have that authority. You
And
just
we could
simply hold out.
stipulate west of 70th, east of 75th,
if you wanted to add that stipulation, you
North
could.
of-
If you did not want to just simply rely upon that.
And now my understanding is if we buy these parcels, the land cost is covered, but the demolition of any buildings falls on whom?
It would be, it was up to 300,000 of the purchase price for cost of the land, so I'm assuming within the 500. Was that within the
It could be,
improvements?
we got about 500 for acquisition, we call acquisition and demolition.
Mm-hmm.
And then we set aside another $500,000 for improvements, park equipment, or whatever, that could also,
But structures,
that's up to you how that's, and the
You see where I'm going with
how
that?
we want to have that to work. And we
Yeah.
said, we'll work with the neighborhood to design what we want to have in the future.
But I think we have to realize in all reality, if that parkland is not used, there's probably not gonna be 3 other acres that we're gonna take off the tax roll.
We're not gonna buy a
but that's my
Larger
point,
duplexes.
is if we're gonna guarantee a park, comes out of this plan, we need to be realistic about buying, not the land, but the buildings, and demolishing them, converting the land to a park, buying the equipment. This is adding up to a considerable amount
yes.
of
That
money.
MATC building's gonna go for a lot of money.
Perhaps. I mean, the best way to explain it is, under the current arrangement, can you live with the 1.6 acre area of McKinley Park as a park for a very long time?
Yes. That's
You
what,
can,
that,
or is that
I
the question
can.
you're saying?
No, yeah, you're right. That's exactly the question.
Can you live with
We're
it?
gonna end up with a 1.6 acre park.
And it possibly could remain there for a long time unless the approves a replacement, which may not happen solely because of the reasons you were talking about. There may not be a suitable parcel within the geographic area you're looking at.
And a price point that we are gonna wanna spend.
Obviously, the sooner you decide that, the better off you are, or the developer fix. If you want to do 8 and MATC, for example, do that soon, before the
Yeah.
developer comes up with the time. Right now, he has.
Which one is MATC?
That's,
You 851? can't see
no,
it.
it's
But
west
he's
of
saying
it.
that's
It's
not
on
working
the
for him,
picture.
so, and I'm not
Well,
saying that
can't-
we.
I guess we're saying we can't encumber today. We think, try to set up a method that doesn't encumber too much that affects financing. It already is. We took an acre 6 out of what was in financing, because it's park now, basically. It's zoned, but it's gonna be used as park and restricted into perpetuity unless you agree otherwise. To set up a way that we can have future conversation once we know which way the development goes. So today, I mean, the concern today is to say restrict A, that's our problem.
So could we hypothetically say, this is our 3 acre park, it's gonna go down to here?
I mean, we can't.
I'm not saying today, but
Yeah.
hypothetically, the thing gets executed, and then, you know,
I
a
think
month
what-
later, we say, this is our 3 acre site.
No,
I think
what-
what's
what-
more like is, we'll come in with a plan. Comments about having take a conversation with MATC, and there's, as John pointed out, some things they might want to swap, and I think there'll emerge, something that everyone's gonna say makes sense. The goal is to set it up today to have the flexibility we need on the financing and not be over encumbering and give you, what you need. Well,
Daycare. Yes, yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what your goal would be is to get the rezoning so that the financing will go through,
correct.
with the commitment that 6, part of 7 stays, then work out the rest at a later date.
Right.
Recognizing the city as a domain authority.
So that's my other question, can we what happened? Could we rezone this land as commercial today, and the thing gets executed in 2 months from now, we say, oh, back to park? I'm not saying we're gonna do that. But it sounds to me like you need it in order to get some financials in order, but if we zoned it back, what happens to the?
Well, I mean, the
fraud.
issue, the challenge for us is
fraud.
that-
I don't know. Yeah, is that considered fraud? Okay.
Yeah, that we did that intentionally
Okay.
with the plan and
We're
everything.
on the hook for guarantees to create increments, so.
Yeah.
That's why I asked. I don't know.
Chairman,
The
yeah.
notion of conditional zoning.
Okay.
So I wouldn't want to proceed this conditional zoning where it has some temporary zoning designation and went back.
Would we ever consider PUD zoning?
That's a possibility.
Because PUD zoning, would that give us the ability to say, we don't like that? How does that affect banks and?
Everybody ability as well.
Other than immediately, but we can come. But I mean, we don't get done and closed.
I think that's a good possibility.
Mr. Chair?
That's probably the way to go.
Who owns?
Mr. Chair, I just got a question. Well, Scott's still in the room.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. If we can look east of 70th Street once, and I know this development had the quad component in there. How many acres was that?
That was another acre.
Acre, okay.
And we did, that's why I said we had green space there, we did show another acre plus, and that's always our intention, it's a matter of just having liquidity to make it work.
And I realize that kids crossing 70th Street may be a
Yeah.
concern as a.
Well, and green space is not a park. Green
Well,
space
that's
in an
what I'm
office
asking is
building.
How flexible.
Yeah, green
Well, we
space
were
in a,
programming that with some outdoor, but you're right. not
Yeah.
a neighborhood.
the green space next to an office building is not a park.
Who owns, see the number 71 between 6 and 4? And then it says city of, and that's not part of the development. That little slice in there.
Not yet.
Well, and again, that's where flexibility helps, because we want to be able to, see the inefficiencies here, right?
Yeah.
You can see why this situation is what it is.
He
'cause
wants a
you
big
got-
rectangle.
Yeah, right. And so, that's how this will all
Right.
play out. So we just, flexibility, enough, you've got enough control, but it doesn't kill our financing and ability.
There must be a bit.
I'm just thinking, let me know if I'm wrong, but go ahead and assuming everything is satisfactory, and approve this on Thursday with the amendments, and then proceed to begin the process of rezoning that entire parcel, including the MATC, nurse,
Daycare.
center and parking lot there, to a planned unit development area. And it gives all of us flexibility to move around parks, anything we want, within that area. And, you can look at drawing rectangles then, we can look at drawing rectangles, vacating the street if we have to, whatever we have to do.
Yeah, we're agreeable with coming back later
Yeah.
and after.
Yeah.
We need,
Yeah,
we need to
First of all,
close.
we
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but we'll come back. We're
We'll
fine.
come back and do the PUD.
Yeah, it's not something we're gonna do overnight, but I think that's the goal to go that way, and the developers agree with that. I think that's the approach we ought to be taking.
And,
It should make the neighborhood feel a lot better because they're gonna have some input.
Part of these proposals here was the $10,000 to
Right.
hire a consultant to work with the
To work with
neighborhood,
the neighborhood.
engagement consultant to look at all these options.
Right.
Come back with a plan.
I do have one more question.
Yeah.
What is the value that you're trying to make up on the balance sheet for this land? What if it stayed P1? What is the delta that you would need to be made whole on?
I mean, honestly, I don't mean to sound over, it would kill the deal. It isn't so much, the difference in that value, it's the flexibility it affords to 5 and 4 and the overall development. And then, so the financing is based, again, not only.
So it's the value of the land on there and what it could be. is
TIF,
what the
new
delta
market
is.
tax credits, our conventional lender, all that looks at the total project, what it can create, how it pays back. So it isn't, take this out, take out X dollars. It was never set up that way.
Any other questions? Not, we'll go into executive session. The above agenda item, which is the discussion on this resolution. The committee may convene in closed session pursuant to provisions of Wisconsin statute section 19.85.
And who owns that 71? That's, isn't that a parking lot?
Which
one? Right next to
MATC,
yeah.
What is it now?
Parking lot.
It's a park.
East of 6?
parking lot.
Yeah.
You're asking.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
parking
here.
lot.
Yeah, MATC
Okay.
owns that, MATC owns that.
Thank you.
They own this and this belongs to the
Moved by
school.
Alderman Rainey, seconded by Alderman
These are two different owners.
Alderman Vitale,
That's why four is the school.
Alderman Marzak,
Aye.
Alderman Eichel,
Aye.
Okay.
and the chair votes aye.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry.
We're not on the.
We're not on the committee.
You want him to stick around?
I don't think so.
Well, he can stay.